The prison ship cut through the black emptiness of space like a knife through water. Inside its cold metal walls sat with his back against the hard floor. His hands were bound behind him with energy cuffs that hummed softly. Around him sat 12 other humans, all wearing the same gray prisoner clothes. All of them had the same mark on their foreheads, a small red circle that meant one thing in the collective: sterile, useless, waste. Was 32 years old when they took him. He remembered the day clearly. The medical officers had come to his small apartment on Colony 7. They had smiled at first, telling him it was just a routine check. Every human in the collective had to go through testing once they turned 30. The collective needed workers. The collective needed soldiers. But most of all, the collective needed breeders. Humans who could make more humans. More servants for the great alien empire that ruled over 200 star systems. The test had taken only 5 minutes. A small device pressed against his arm, a soft beep. Then the medical officer's face had changed. The smile disappeared. The warmth in his eyes turned to cold disgust. "Sterile," the officer had said, as if the word itself was poison. "Pack your things, you have 1 hour." Had not even been allowed to say goodbye to his mother. He had not been allowed to contact his friends. 1 hour later, he was on a transport ship heading to Processing Station 9. That was 3 weeks ago. Now he was here, on a prison ship heading to somewhere nobody talked about. The other prisoners whispered about it sometimes. They called it the graveyard. They said sterile humans were sent there to work in the mines until their bodies gave out. They said nobody ever came back. The ship shook suddenly, looked up at the ceiling as red warning lights began to flash. An alarm started screaming through the speakers. The other prisoners began to panic. Some of them tried to stand up, but the energy chains connecting their cuffs to the floor held them in place. "What's happening?" a woman next to shouted. Nobody answered her. The ship shook again, harder this time, heard a terrible sound of metal tearing. Then everything went sideways. The artificial gravity failed for a moment, and all the prisoners floated up from the floor before crashing back down. Felt his shoulder hit the ground hard. Pain shot through his arm. The door to their prison hold burst open. A collective soldier stumbled in. He was one of a species that looked like tall gray humanoids with 4 arms and large black eyes. His uniform was torn and there was blue blood running down his face. "Emergency," the soldier gasped. "Ship is going down. Unknown hostile has attacked. All prisoners must." He never finished his sentence. A beam of bright green light came through the door behind him and struck him in the back. The soldier fell forward and did not move again. Stared at the doorway. Something was coming. He could hear it. Heavy footsteps that made the metal floor shake. Then he saw it and his heart stopped beating for a moment. It was massive, at least 3 meters tall and 5 meters long. It walked on 4 legs that ended in claws as long as forearm. Its body was covered in scales that shifted colors from dark purple to deep blue to black as it moved. 2 great wings were folded against its back. Its head was long and narrow, with a mouth full of teeth that glowed faintly in the emergency lighting. But it was the eyes that could not look away from. They were golden, bright and ancient, and filled with an intelligence that was terrifying to see. The creature was a dragon, not the kind from old Earth stories. This was something else entirely, something that had existed before humans had even learned to walk upright, had heard legends about these beings. They called them the Ancients. They said they were the first intelligent species in the galaxy, born when the universe was still young. They said they were all dead now, wiped out in a war that happened before recorded history began. Apparently, the legends were wrong. The dragon stepped into the prison hold. Its golden eyes moved slowly across the room, looking at each prisoner in turn. When those eyes found, they stopped. The dragon tilted its head to one side, studying him the way a scientist might study an interesting specimen. "Humans," the dragon said. Its voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "I have not seen your kind in a very long time." "Please," one of the prisoners begged, "please don't kill us. We're just prisoners, we're nobody, we're sterile waste. The dragon's eyes moved to the man who had spoken. Sterile, it repeated slowly, as if tasting the word. You are considered worthless because you cannot breed. Is this correct? Nobody answered. The dragon made a sound that might have been laughter. How little has changed, it said. Civilizations rise and fall, empires are born and die, but stupidity remains constant. The dragon moved further into the room. Its tail swept behind it, knocking against the walls. It lowered its head toward, bringing those golden eyes close enough that could see his own reflection in them. You, the dragon said, what is your name, human? Tried to speak. His voice came out as a croak. He swallowed and tried again. The dragon repeated, I have been sleeping for 63,000 years. I woke up to find my ship broken and dying. I need help to repair it. You will provide this help. I don't know anything about alien ships, said. You know how to work. You know how to follow instructions. You know how to survive. That is enough. Turn to look at the other prisoners. I will take one of you with me. The rest will be left here. This ship will crash on the nearest planet in approximately 4 hours. Whether you survive or not is not my concern. The dragon looked back at, You will come with me. Consider yourself fortunate. Did not feel fortunate. He felt terrified. But when claw cut through his energy chains like they were made of paper, he did not resist. When the dragon turned and walked out of the prison hold, followed. What choice did he have? The prison ship was in chaos. Bodies of collective soldiers lay everywhere. Some of them looked like they had been burned. Others looked like they had been torn apart. Stepped over them carefully, trying not to look too closely. Moved ahead of him, not caring about the destruction it had caused. You killed them all, said. Yes, replied without turning around. Why? Because they had something I needed, and would not give it willingly. What did they have? Stopped walking. It turned its great head to look at over its shoulder. Information, the location of my ship. It crashed on a planet in this system many thousands of years ago. The collective found it and were planning to study it. I could not allow this. They reached an airlock. Through the small window, could see another ship attached to the prison vessel. It was smaller than the prison ship, but still large enough to hold a crew of 50. It looked old, its hull covered in strange markings that seemed to glow with their own light. This is not my true ship, explained, seeing's confusion. This is merely a transport I acquired. My true ship is on the planet below. It has been there for 63,000 years, waiting for me to return. The airlock opened and followed into the smaller ship. The interior was like nothing had ever seen. The walls were covered in the same glowing markings as the outside. The floor was warm beneath his feet, almost like it was alive. There were no visible controls, no screens, no buttons, just smooth surfaces and soft light. Sit there, commanded, pointing with one claw toward a raised platform in the center of the room. We will reach the planet in 2 hours. Sat down on the platform. It molded itself to his body, becoming surprisingly comfortable. He watched as settled its massive body onto the floor, folding its legs beneath it like a cat preparing to sleep. Why me? Asked. Why did you choose me instead of one of the others? His golden eyes opened. Because you were the only one not screaming. Because you looked at me with fear, yes, but also with curiosity. The others saw only a monster. You saw something more. What do you see when you look at me? I see a human, a young species, barely out of its infancy, full of potential but held back by the limitations placed upon you by others. Paused. I also see someone who has been told he is worthless because he cannot produce offspring. This is something I understand. Felt his heart skip a beat. You're sterile too. In a manner of speaking, my kind does not reproduce the way yours does. We are born from the energy of dying stars. There have been no dying stars of the right type for millions of years. I am the last of my kind, the last ancient in all the universe. did not know what to say to that. The weight of those words was too heavy to comprehend. The last of an entire species. The last being of a race that had existed since the beginning of everything. "I'm sorry," said finally. Made that grinding sound again, the one that might have been laughter. "Do not be sorry. My kind had our time. We built great civilizations. We explored every corner of the universe. We learned secrets that younger species cannot even imagine. Our time ended as all times must end. But before my time ends completely, I wish to complete one final task." "What task?" "You will learn in time. For now, rest. You will need your strength for what comes next." Wanted to ask more questions, but exhaustion was pulling at him. The platform beneath him was warm and soft. The gentle hum of the ship was oddly soothing. Before he knew it, his eyes had closed and he was falling into sleep. He dreamed of dragons flying through clouds of burning gas. He dreamed of stars being born and dying. He dreamed of a universe so young that it still remembered the moment of its own creation. When he woke, the ship had landed. Was already at the airlock waiting. "Come," the dragon said. "It is time for you to see what you will be working on for the next several years." Several years. The words hit like a punch to the stomach. He had hoped this would be temporary. A few days, maybe a week, and then would let him go. But several years. "I don't have a choice, do I?" asked. "No," replied simply. "But consider this. With the collective, you would have spent your remaining years working in mines until your body failed. With me, you will learn things no human has ever learned. You will see wonders that your species has never imagined. And when your work is complete, I will give you something far more valuable than freedom." What could be more valuable than freedom? His golden eyes seemed to glow brighter for a moment. Hope. The airlock opened and stepped out onto the surface of an alien world. The sky was orange and purple, with 3 suns hanging low on the horizon. The ground beneath his feet was covered in blue grass that came up to his knees. In the distance, he could see mountains that glowed with internal fire. And directly ahead of him, half buried in the ground, was the most incredible thing had ever seen. His true ship was enormous. It was at least 1 kilometer long and half a kilometer wide. Its hull was made of something that looked like black glass, perfectly smooth and unblemished despite the thousands of years it had been buried. Could see symbols carved into its surface, similar to the ones on the transport ship, but far more complex. They pulsed with a soft golden light that matched its eyes. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said, coming to stand beside. "I built it myself, back when my kind still existed in numbers greater than 1. It took me 3,000 years to complete." 3,000 years, repeated in disbelief. "Time moves differently for the ancients. 3,000 years to me is like 3 months to you." Began walking toward the buried ship. "It crashed here because of damage sustained in the war that destroyed my kind. I put myself into hibernation, hoping that when I woke, the damage would have healed itself. But the ship's self-repair systems were too badly damaged. It needs organic intervention to be restored." "And that's where I come in," said. "Yes, I cannot do this work myself. My claws are not made for delicate tasks, and the ship systems require a certain type of biological energy to function properly. Energy that ancients do not possess but humans do." They reached the ship. Up close, could see that the black glass hull was covered in fine cracks, like the surface of a frozen lake in spring. Placed one claw against the hull and spoke something in a language could not understand. A doorway appeared, sliding open without a sound. "Welcome to the eternal night," said. "This will be your home for the next several years." Stepped inside. The interior of the eternal night was vast and dark. Emergency lighting provided just enough illumination to see where he was walking. The walls were covered in dead screens and inactive consoles. Everything was coated in a layer of fine dust. "The ship's main power core is damaged," explained as they walked deeper into the vessel. "That is the first thing that needs to be repaired. Without power, none of the other systems can function. Where is the power core? At the center of the ship. It will take us approximately 1 hour to reach it. They walked in silence through endless corridors, saw rooms filled with strange machinery. He saw what looked like sleeping chambers, each one large enough to hold a creature of size. He saw a room that contained nothing but floating orbs of light that danced around each other in complex patterns. "What is that?" he asked, pointing at the orbs. "A memory garden," replied. "Each of those lights contains the memories of an ancient who has passed. When my kind died, their consciousness would be preserved in those orbs. I can access them whenever I wish, to remember those who are gone." "There are thousands of them," said softly. "Yes, thousands of my brothers and sisters. All that remains of them now are lights and memories." They continued on until they reached the center of the ship. Here, found a chamber so large he could not see the walls or ceiling. In the middle of this chamber was the power core. It looked like a small sun, but its light was dim and flickering. Tubes and cables ran from it in all directions, connecting it to the rest of the ship. "The core's containment field has failed," said. "Energy is leaking out instead of being channeled to the ship systems. You will need to repair the field generators." Looked at the massive machine. "I don't know how to repair something like this. I was a sanitation worker before I was taken. I cleaned floors and emptied garbage." "You will learn," replied. "I will teach you everything you need to know. It will take time, but we have plenty of that." The dragon settled onto the floor, wrapping its tail around its body. "I have waited 63,000 years for this moment. I can wait a few more years while you learn." And so new life began. The first year was the hardest. Was a patient teacher, but the technology of the ancients was so far beyond anything had ever seen that sometimes he felt like a child trying to understand advanced mathematics. The tools he was given looked like simple metal rods, but they could do things that seemed like magic. They could cut through any material, weld any connection, and manipulate energy in ways that explanation. Worked 18 hours a day at first, sleeping only when his body could no longer stay awake. He made mistakes constantly. Entire sections had to be redone because he had connected something wrong or used the wrong setting on a tool, but never got angry. The dragon would simply explain what had gone wrong and how to fix it, then wait patiently while tried again. "Your species learns quickly," observed one day, watching repair a section of conduit. "When I first encountered humans, you were still living in caves and hunting with sharpened sticks." "You knew humans back then?" asked, not looking up from his work. "I observed your world briefly during one of my journeys. You were an interesting species, full of curiosity and determination. I suspected you would go far if you survived long enough." "We went far enough to become slaves of the collective." "That is a temporary situation. The collective will fall eventually. All empires do. And when they fall, your species will have a chance to become something greater, if you survive." Put down his tool and turned to face. "Do you think we'll survive?" "I think that depends on whether you can overcome the limitations others have placed upon you. The collective treats humans as breeding stock because that is all they want you to be. But I have seen what humans can become when given the chance to grow. You are capable of incredible things. All you need is the opportunity to prove it." Months passed. Skills improved. The power core's containment field was repaired, and the eternal night hummed back to life. Systems that had been dark for thousands of years began to glow again. Screens flickered on, displaying information in a language was slowly learning to read. "You are doing well," said one evening, as sat eating a meal of synthesized food. The ship's matter converters had been restored, allowing it to create food and water from raw materials. "At this rate, the ship will be fully operational within 5 more years." 5 more years, said quietly. He had been on the planet for almost 2 years now. Sometimes he forgot what life had been like before. He could barely remember his mother's face. He could not remember the names of his friends. All he knew was the ship and the work end. "Does this trouble you?" asked. "Sometimes I wonder what the point is," admitted. "I fix your ship, you leave. Then what happens to me? Do you drop me off somewhere? Do I go back to being a sterile nobody that no one wants?" Was silent for a long moment. Then the dragon rose and walked over to stand beside. Despite their size difference, no longer felt afraid. He had grown used to the ancient's presence. In some ways, had become the closest thing to a friend had ever had. "Let me show you something," said. "Something I have not shown any being in over 60,000 years." Followed through the ship, until they reached a door he had never seen before. Spoke a word in the ancient language, and the door slid open to reveal a room filled with golden light. At the center of the room was a sphere about 2 meters in diameter. It floated in the air, rotating slowly. Its surface was covered in swirling patterns that seemed to change every time blinked. "What is it?" asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is the seed of stars," replied. "It is the most precious object in the universe. With it, I can create a new star of the type that gives birth to my kind." Felt his heart stop for a moment. "You can make more ancients." "Not exactly. The process is complicated. A dying star of the right type releases energy that can form into new ancient consciousness, but there have been no such stars for millions of years. The universe simply stopped producing them." His golden eyes fixed on the sphere with an emotion could only describe as longing. "With the seed of stars, I can create one final star, one final chance for my kind to continue." "Then why haven't you used it?" "Because the seed requires something I do not possess. It requires hope. It requires the belief that the future holds something worth living for. It requires a connection to life, to growth, to continuation. The ancients at the end had none of these things. We had grown too old, too tired. We had seen too much. The seed sensed this and refused to activate. Look down at. But you have something my kind lost long ago. Despite everything that has been done to you, despite being told you are worthless, despite being thrown away like garbage, you still hope. You still believe that things can get better. I have seen it in the way you work, in the way you learn, in the way you face each day." "I don't understand," said. "You will, in time you will," began walking back toward the door. "The ship needs more repairs. The communications array still needs to be restored. We have much work to do." Followed, but he kept thinking about the seed of stars, about a dragon who was the last of its kind, waiting for 63,000 years for a chance to bring its people back, about hope and what it meant to creatures who had lived for millions of years. The 3rd year of captivity brought new challenges. The planet's seasons were changing. What had been pleasant weather when he arrived was turning cold and harsh. Storms swept across the landscape, bringing winds that could knock a grown man off his feet. Snow fell in thick blankets that buried everything in white. Inside the eternal night was warm and safe. The ship's environmental systems were fully operational now, maintaining a comfortable temperature no matter what happened outside. But the storms interfered with his work on the external hull repairs. He could only go outside during the brief periods between storms. "Tell me about the war," said one day, as he worked on rebuilding a sensor array. "The one that destroyed your kind." Was lying nearby, watching work. The dragon spent most of its time observing now. There was little needed to be taught anymore. "It was called the Void War," replied. "It began because of fear. There was another ancient species almost as old as mine. They were called the Shapers. They had the power to manipulate matter at the quantum level. They could reshape reality itself." "That sounds terrifying." It was. The Shapers believed that the universe was dying. They wanted to reshape it, to create a new reality that would last forever. My kind disagreed. We believed the universe should be allowed to follow its natural course, even if that course led to eventual death. The argument became a war. The war lasted for 10,000 years. Who won? No one. The Shapers destroyed themselves trying to complete their great work. My kind was nearly wiped out in the process. By the time the war ended, there were less than 100 ancients left alive. We scattered across the universe, each of us searching for a reason to continue existing. His eyes grew distant. Most of us eventually stopped searching. We put ourselves into hibernation or simply allowed our consciousness to fade away. I am the only one who kept going, kept hopping. I do not know why, perhaps stubbornness, perhaps fear of oblivion, perhaps just curiosity about what the universe would become without us. I'm glad you kept going, said quietly. Looked at him with something that might have been surprise. Why? Because otherwise I would have died in those mines. You saved me, even if that wasn't your intention. You gave me a purpose when everyone else said I had none. You have given me something as well, something I had not felt in a very long time. What? Connection. For 63,000 years I have been alone. Even before that, when other ancients still existed, we were solitary creatures. We did not form bonds the way your species does. But working with you, teaching you, watching you grow and learn, I have come to understand why humans value companionship so highly. It makes existence more bearable. Smiled, are we friends? The dragon made that grinding sound that served as laughter. I believe we are. I believe we are. The years continued to pass. The 4th year saw the completion of the propulsion systems. The 5th year brought the communications array back online. The 6th year was spent repairing the weapons systems, a task that made uncomfortable until explained they were purely defensive. With each year changed. He was no longer the frightened young man who had followed a dragon off a crashing ship. He moved through the eternal night with confidence, knowing every corridor and room. He could read the ancient language almost fluently. He could operate the ship systems almost as well as could. But more than that, his understanding of the universe had changed. Through his conversations with, he had learned things that no human had ever known. He understood the true nature of space and time. He knew the history of a universe that was far stranger and more wonderful than he had ever imagined. He had seen recordings of ancient civilizations at their height, cities that floated among the stars, artwork that could only be appreciated across multiple dimensions. The ship is almost ready, announced one morning at the beginning of 7th year on the planet. There are only a few more repairs needed, then we can leave. Felt a mix of emotions at those words. Joy that the long project was almost complete, pride in what he had accomplished, but also sadness. Once the ship was repaired, what would happen? Would simply drop him off somewhere and leave? Would this strange friendship end as abruptly as it had begun? Where will you go? Asked. To the edge of the universe, replied. There is a place there where the conditions are right for the seed of stars to activate, but I cannot go alone. The seed still requires what I cannot provide: hope, connection, the belief that new life is worth creating. You want me to come with you? I want to ask if you would be willing. The journey will take many years, even with the eternal night's advanced drives. You would be leaving your species behind, possibly forever. It is not a decision to be made lightly. Thought about the question. He thought about the life he had left behind, the mother he would probably never see again, the humanity that had declared him worthless. He thought about the cold mines where he would have spent his remaining years. He thought about the dragon who had shown him wonders beyond imagination. I don't need time to decide, said. I'll come with you. His golden eyes seemed to glow brighter. You are certain? I've spent 7 years helping you rebuild this ship. I've learned more than any human has ever learned. I've become friends with a creature older than the mountains on my. Why would I want to go back to a universe that called me worthless? Then we have much to do, said, rising to its full height. The final repairs must be completed, and you must prepare yourself for a journey like nothing you have ever experienced. The final months of preparation were intense. Worked around the clock, finishing the last systems, running diagnostics, making sure everything was perfect. Tested the propulsion drives, bringing them up to full power for the first time in 63,000 years. The eternal night hummed with energy, eager to fly again. The night before their departure, stood outside the ship looking up at the alien sky. 3 moons hung overhead, each a different color. The blue grass rustled in the wind. In the distance, the fire mountains glowed against the darkness. "Are you having second thoughts?" asked, coming to stand beside him. "No," replied. "I'm just saying goodbye. I've spent 7 years on this planet. It's become familiar, comfortable. Part of me will miss it." "That is natural. Every journey requires leaving something behind." Looked up at the sky. "But every journey also leads somewhere new, somewhere that might become just as familiar, just as comfortable." Nodded. "I'm ready." "Then let us begin." They boarded the eternal night, took his place on the bridge, a seat that had created specifically for him during the repairs. It fit his body perfectly, with controls modified for human hands. From here, he could operate many of the ship's systems, serving as a co-pilot too. The great ship rose slowly from the ground, shaking off the dirt and debris that had accumulated over 6 decades of repair work. It climbed through the atmosphere, through the clouds, through the thin upper air, and into the blackness of space. Watched the planet shrink below them. He watched the 3 suns grow smaller in the distance. He watched as the stars themselves seemed to change, shifting and dancing as the eternal night accelerated to speeds that comprehension. "The edge of the universe," said. "A place where time and space break down, a place where new possibilities can be born. That is where we go, that is where everything changes." Felt something he had not felt in a very long time, not since before the medical officers came to his apartment, not since before he was declared worthless. He felt hope. The journey was only beginning, but knew deep in his heart that this was what he had been born for, not breeding, not working in mines, not serving an empire that saw him as nothing more than meat. He had been born to help a dragon fly to the edge of the universe. He had been born to give hope to a creature who had lost everything. He had been born to prove that even those society throws away can achieve something magnificent. The eternal night flew on, carrying its 2 passengers toward their destiny. Behind them, the stars faded into darkness. Ahead of them, something wonderful waited. Something that would change everything. The eternal night traveled through space at speeds that still struggled to understand even after 7 years of learning ancient technology. Stars blurred past them like raindrops on a window. Galaxies appeared and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The universe itself seemed to bend and twist around the ship as it moved through dimensions that human science did not even know existed. Spent most of his time on the bridge, watching the impossible views through the ship's observation screens. Every day brought something new. Nebulas that burned with colors that had no names in any human language. Black holes that sang with radio waves, ancient songs from the beginning of time. Planets made entirely of diamond, crystal worlds that sparkled like jewels in the light of distant suns. "How long until we reach the edge?" asked one day, as they passed through a region of space filled with what looked like floating islands. Each island was covered in vegetation, somehow surviving in the vacuum of space through mechanisms could only guess at. "In terms your mind can understand, approximately 15 years, replied. The dragon was resting on its platform, eyes half closed. But time moves strangely on this journey. What feels like 15 years to us may be thousands of years passing in the universe behind us, or it may be only days. The closer we get to the edge, the less meaning time has." 15 years. Tried to wrap his head around the number. He would be in his mid-50s by the time they arrived, assuming his body aged normally. He would have spent more than half his life with. "Will I still be alive when we get there?" he asked. His eyes opened fully, golden and warm. "Yes. The ship's environment slows biological aging. You will arrive at the edge much as you are now. perhaps a few years older in appearance, but no more than that. Felt relief wash over him. He had not realized how much the question had been bothering him until answered it. "Tell me more about the edge," said, settling into his chair. "What will we find there?" Was silent for a moment, gathering thoughts that had accumulated over millions of years. The edge of the universe is not like any place you have ever seen or imagined. It is where reality itself breaks down. The laws of physics that govern everything within the universe do not apply there. Matter can become energy, and energy can become matter without any conversion process. Time can flow backward or sideways or not at all. Space can fold in on itself, creating loops that have no beginning or end. It sounds dangerous. It is extremely dangerous. Many ancients died attempting to explore the edge in the early days of our existence. We learned to respect it, to approach it carefully, shifted its massive body, scales catching the light. But it is also a place of incredible possibility. At the edge, new things can be created that cannot exist anywhere else. That is why the seed of stars must be activated there. Only at the edge can its power create a star capable of giving birth to new ancients. Thought about this for a long time. He thought about the seed of stars, sitting in its chamber deep within the ship. He thought about the hope that had carried for 63,000 years. He thought about his own role in all of this. He said finally, "What exactly do I need to do when we get there?" The dragon rose from its resting position and walked over to stand beside its chair. Despite its enormous size, could move with surprising grace when it wanted to. The seed of stars requires a catalyst to activate, not a physical catalyst but an emotional one. It needs to feel hope. It needs to sense that the being who activates it truly believes in the possibility of new life, new beginning. My kind lost that ability long ago. We became too old, too cynical. We had seen too many civilizations rise and fall. We had watched too many species destroy themselves. Hope became a luxury we could no longer afford. "But I can hope," said. "Yes, you can hope with a purity that my kind never achieved even at our best. Despite everything you have experienced, despite being abandoned and cast aside, you still believe that things can be better. You still look at the universe with wonder instead of weariness. That is what the seed needs. That is what will make it work." Nodded slowly. The responsibility felt enormous, but also strangely right. This was why I had chosen him, not because he was special in any physical way, not because of any skill or talent, but because he could feel something that a creature millions of years old could not. "I won't let you down," said. "I know," replied. "I have never doubted that." The months turned into years, established a routine that helped him maintain sanity during the long journey. He would wake, eat, exercise in the ship's training room, then spend several hours studying the ancient records stored in the ship's memory banks. He learned about the history of the universe from the perspective of beings who had been there from the beginning. He learned about species that had risen to greatness and fallen to dust long before humans had even evolved. In the afternoons, he would talk with. These conversations became the highlight of his days. The dragon was an endless source of knowledge and wisdom. It had seen things that could barely imagine. It had lived through events that were now only legends, distorted by thousands of years of retelling. "Tell me about the first time you saw a human," requested one day. Made that grinding sound that served as laughter. "It was approximately 300,000 years ago, by your planet's reckoning. I was traveling through that region of the galaxy, investigating reports of a new intelligent species developing on a small blue world." "Earth?" "Yes, Earth. Such a small planet, so fragile. I thought surely the species living there would destroy themselves before achieving anything significant. Your kind had a habit of fighting each other over the most trivial things. Territory, resources, ideological differences that seemed meaningless to an outside observer." "We haven't changed much," admitted. "Oh, but you have. When I first observed your kind, you had not yet developed language complex enough to express abstract concepts. You had not yet discovered fire. You had not yet begun to dream of reaching the stars. Now look at you. You spread across multiple worlds. You developed technology that would have seemed like magic to your ancestors. You survived long enough to attract the attention of species far older and more powerful than yourselves, and become their slaves. Temporary setback, said dismissively. The collective is a dying civilization even if they don't know it yet. They have stopped growing, stopped learning. They maintain their empire through force because they have nothing else to offer. Your kind, on the other hand, continues to adapt and evolve. Given enough time, you will surpass them. Wanted to believe this, but it was hard. The collective had controlled humanity for over 200 years. Generation after generation had been born into servitude, knowing nothing else. How can you be so sure? He asked. Turned its great head to look directly at. Because I have seen this pattern repeat itself countless times across the history of the universe. Young species are enslaved by older ones. They suffer, they struggle, they almost break. But the ones with fire in their hearts, the ones who refuse to accept their fate, they always find a way to break free. Your species has that fire. I saw it in you the first moment I looked into your eyes. The conversation stayed with for days afterward. He found himself thinking about his people, about the billions of humans scattered across collective space. They were all suffering under alien rule. They were all told they were inferior, that they existed only to serve. But if it was right, then somewhere among them was the spark that would eventually ignite a revolution. Maybe that spark would come from a sterile nobody that the collective had thrown away. 3 years into the journey, they encountered their first obstacle. The eternal night's sensors detected something ahead of them, something that was blocking their path. Frowned, an expression that looked strange on a dragon's face, and brought the ship to a stop. "What is it?" asked, looking at the sensor readings. He had learned enough to interpret most of the data, but what he was seeing didn't make sense. The readings showed something massive, almost as large as a small moon, but completely invisible to optical sensors. "A void stalker," replied, its voice carrying an edge of concern that had never heard before. "I had hoped we would not encounter one on this journey." "What's a void stalker?" "A creature from the spaces between dimensions. They were created during the Void War, weapons designed by the Shapers to hunt ancients. We destroyed most of them before the war ended, but some escaped into regions of space that even we could not reach." Felt a chill run down his spine. "It's hunting us. It has detected our presence. It is deciding whether we are worth pursuing. Move to the center of the bridge, spreading its wings slightly. Prepare yourself. If it decides to attack, things will become very unpleasant very quickly." They waited in tense silence. On the sensor display, watched the invisible mass move slowly, circling around the eternal night like a shark circling a wounded fish. "Can we outrun it?" asked. "No, void stalkers can move through dimensions instantaneously. There is no escape once they decide to pursue." "Can we fight it?" Was quiet for a moment. The weapons on this ship were designed to combat void stalkers. In my prime, I could have destroyed one without much difficulty, but I am not in my prime. The long hibernation weakened me. If we must fight, the outcome is uncertain. The sensor reading suddenly changed. The invisible mass was moving toward them, accelerating rapidly. "It has decided," said, "battle stations." Rushed to his console. The controls were familiar now after years of practice. He activated the ship's defensive shields, bringing them up to full power. He armed the weapon systems, feeling the ship hum with barely contained energy. "Target approaching," he reported. "Impact in 30 seconds. "Evasive maneuvers on my mark," commanded. The dragon closed its eyes, focusing its ancient mind on the battle to come. Now. Banked the eternal night hard to the left. The ship responded instantly, shifting through dimensions as it moved, making it harder to track. The void stalker adjusted its course to follow, but it was a fraction of a second too slow. It passed through the space where they had been moments before. "Fire forward weapons," ordered. Press the firing controls. Beams of golden energy shot from the ship's bow, piercing the empty space ahead of them. There was a sound like tearing metal, and suddenly the Void Stalker became visible. Gasped at what he saw. The creature was enormous, a twisting mass of tendrils and darkness. It had no clear shape, constantly shifting and changing as if it couldn't decide what form to take. Where the golden beams had struck, wounds glowed white-hot against the darkness. "It's wounded," said. "But not dead. It will be more aggressive now." The Void Stalker screamed. The sound came not through the ship's speakers but directly into his mind, a psychic assault that made his vision blur and his stomach churn. He gripped his console, fighting to stay conscious. "Shield your thoughts," commanded. "Focus on one memory, one image. Do not let it into your mind." Thought of his mother. He remembered her face, the way she had smiled at him when he was young. He focused on that image with all his strength, building a wall around it. The psychic attack lessened, could think clearly again. "The creature is preparing to phase through our shields," said. "When it does, I will need to engage it directly. You must keep the ship stable and continue firing when you have clear shots." "Wait, you're going to fight that thing yourself." "It is the only way. Void Stalkers can only be truly destroyed by direct contact with ancient energy. Our weapons can wound it but not kill it." Before could object, moved toward the bridge's emergency hatch. The dragon spoke a word in the ancient language, and the hatch opened to reveal the vacuum of space. But instead of being sucked out, its body began to glow with the same golden light as its eyes. A bubble of energy surrounded the dragon as it stepped out into the void. Watched through the observation screens as flew toward the Void Stalker. The dragon seemed small against the massive creature, like a sparrow attacking an eagle, but appearances were deceiving. When unleashed its first attack, a torrent of golden fire that poured from its mouth, the Void Stalker recoiled as if struck by a physical blow. The battle was like nothing had ever witnessed. Moved with incredible speed, dodging the stalker's tendrils, striking with claws and teeth and fire. The creature screamed again and again, its psychic attacks battering against mental defenses. But he held firm, focusing on his mother's face, on the warmth of her love, on the hope that he would somehow see her again. "Firing solution acquired," muttered to himself, spotting an opening. He pulled the trigger, sending another volley of golden energy into the Void Stalker's flank. The creature twisted in pain and used the distraction to tear a massive chunk from its body. The battle lasted for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Gradually, the Void Stalker weakened. Its attacks became slower, more desperate. Its form began to dissolve at the edges, breaking apart into wisps of darkness that faded into nothing. With one final burst of golden fire, destroyed the creature's core. The Void Stalker let out one last psychic scream, then collapsed in on itself and disappeared. Released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The emergency hatch opened and returned to the bridge. The dragon looked exhausted. Its scales had lost some of their luster, and its golden eyes were dim. "Are you okay?" asked, rushing to the dragon's side. "I will recover," replied, lowering itself to the floor. "But I must rest. That battle took more from me than I would like to admit." "Is that why you didn't want to fight?" "Yes, every battle drains me. I do not regenerate as quickly as I once did. The long hibernation took a toll that will never fully heal," closed its eyes. "Watch over the ship while I sleep. I trust you." Those 3 words meant more to than any praise he had ever received. He returned to his console and kept watch while the ancient dragon slept. Slept for 3 weeks. During that time, kept the eternal night flying, adjusting their course when necessary, monitoring the sensors for any sign of additional threats. He ate alone, slept in shifts, and filled the silence by talking to the ship itself. The eternal night was partially alive in a way he didn't fully understand, and it seemed to appreciate the company. "I never thought I'd end up here," said one evening, sitting in his chair with a cup of synthesized tea. "Fighting alien monsters at the side of a dragon, flying to the edge of the universe. If you had told me this 10 years ago, I would have thought you were crazy." The ship hummed in response. A warm feeling spread through his body, like being wrapped in a comfortable blanket. "I guess you understand, don't you? You've been with since the beginning. You've seen everything." Another hum. The lights on the bridge flickered in what might have been agreement. "Do you think we'll make it? Do you think the seed will work?" This time, the response was different. A series of lights activated on his console, displaying an image. It took him a moment to understand what he was seeing. It was a recording, ancient beyond measure. It showed an ancient, not but another member of the same species, standing before a young star. The star was dying, its outer layers expanding and burning away. As watched, the ancient raised its hands and a sphere appeared between them, the seed of stars. The ancient spoke words that could not understand. The seed began to glow, brighter and brighter, until it was painful to look at. Then it shot forward, entering the dying star. For a moment nothing happened. Then the star pulsed. Its death throes reversed. The expanding outer layers contracted, pulled back by some impossible force. The star's core, instead of cooling and collapsing, grew hotter and brighter. It began to shine with a new light, a golden light that recognized. And from that golden light, shapes began to emerge. Small at first, barely visible but growing larger with each passing moment. Dragons, new ancients being born from the fire of a reborn star. The recording ended. Sat in stunned silence. He had understood the theory of what was trying to accomplish, but seeing it actually happen was something else entirely. It was proof that this was possible, proof that the seed could work. "Thank you," he whispered to the ship. "Thank you for showing me that." The ship hummed warmly in response. When finally woke, told the dragon about the recording, listened without interruption, then made that grinding sound of laughter. "The eternal night has always been perceptive," the dragon said. "It knew you needed reassurance. It showed you what you needed to see. It worked before. The seed actually worked." "Yes. 3 times in the history of my kind, the seed of stars was used to create new ancients. The last time was over 200 million years ago. The conditions since then have never been right," rose, stretching its wings. "But at the edge of the universe, conditions are always right for anything. That is the nature of the edge." "How much longer until we get there?" Consulted the navigation display. "Approximately 11 more years. We have crossed roughly a quarter of the distance." 11 years. Had already spent almost 4 years on this journey. 15 years total, just as had predicted. He would spend 15 years of his life traveling to a place no human had ever been, for a purpose no human had ever attempted. "I'm glad I came with you," said. Looked at him with those ancient golden eyes. "As am I, as am I." The years continued to pass. 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. Changed during this time, in ways both physical and mental. His body, preserved by the ship's environment, remained young, but his mind grew in ways he could never have imagined. Through his studies and conversations with, he developed an understanding of the universe that exceeded anything human science had ever achieved. He learned to see the connections between all things, the threads of energy and matter that linked everything from the smallest particle to the largest galaxy. He learned to feel the pulse of the universe, its slow heartbeat that had been counting time since the moment of creation. He learned to understand the thoughts of the eternal night itself, forming a bond with the ship that was almost symbiotic. "You have changed," observed one day, as they passed through a region of space filled with floating crystals that sang with harmonic vibrations. "You are no longer the frightened human I rescued from that prison ship." "No," agreed, "I'm not." "What are you, then?" Thought about the question for a long time. I'm not sure. I'm still human, but I'm also something more, something different. It's like I've woken up from a dream I didn't know I was having. I can see things now that I couldn't see before, feel things I couldn't feel before. You have touched the ancient mind, said. Through your connection with the eternal night, through your years of study, through our conversations, you have developed something my kind once called the greater sight. The ability to perceive reality as it truly is, without the filters that most minds create to protect themselves from the vastness of existence. Is that dangerous? It can be. Many beings who develop the greater sight go mad. They cannot handle the weight of infinite knowledge, infinite connection, but you have handled it remarkably well. You have maintained your sanity, your identity. You have integrated the greater sight into yourself rather than being consumed by it. Nodded, he had felt the madness pressing against the edges of his consciousness, especially in the early years, but something had held him steady. Perhaps his human stubbornness. Perhaps his hope, that quality that valued so highly. Perhaps simply his determination to see this journey through to the end. We're getting close now, he said. I can feel it. Yes, another 2 years, perhaps less. The fabric of reality is already beginning to thin. Looked out at the view on the observation screens. The stars here were different from the ones in normal space. They pulsed with strange rhythms, flickering in and out of existence. The space between them was not black but filled with swirling colors, the raw stuff of creation bleeding through from whatever lay beyond. It's beautiful, said. It is the most beautiful place in all of existence, agreed. And the most dangerous. From here on, we must be extremely careful. Reality itself becomes hostile near the edge. What do you mean? The laws of physics that we take for granted will begin to break down. Things that should be impossible will become possible. Things that should be solid will become fluid. We may experience temporal distortions, spatial anomalies, even changes to our fundamental nature. The eternal night was designed to handle such conditions, but even it has limits. Felt a chill despite the warmth of the bridge. Will we survive? I believe so. I have traveled to the edge before in my youth. I know the signs, the dangers, the safe paths, but nothing is certain. The edge is unpredictable by its very nature. Then let's not waste any more time. Made that grinding sound of laughter. You have truly become remarkable. In all my millions of years of existence, I have never met a being quite like you. Is that a good thing? It is the best thing. It is the reason I believe we will succeed. The eternal night flew on, carrying its passengers toward the boundary of everything that existed. Behind them, the universe they had known grew distant, fading into memory. Ahead of them, the edge beckoned, promising either triumph or oblivion. Watched the strange stars flicker and pulse. He felt the greater sight expanding within him, showing him glimpses of what lay ahead. He saw possibilities branching out before them like the roots of an infinite tree. In some branches, they succeeded. In others, they failed. In still others, something happened that he could not understand, something beyond even the greater sight's ability to perceive. But in all the possibilities, one thing remained constant. Face them without fear. He faced them with hope. That hope, he knew, was what would make all the difference. 2 more years, he said to himself. 2 more years and everything changes. The eternal night hummed in agreement, spread its wings, catching the strange light of the edge stars, and the journey continued, carrying them ever closer to their destiny. The edge of the universe waited, the seed of stars waited, the hope of an entire species waited. And once a sterile nobody deemed worthless by an empire was ready to fulfill that hope. 12 years into the journey, they reached the final barrier. Before them stretched a wall of light that extended in every direction as far as the greater sight could perceive. It was not made of any substance could identify. It was not energy or matter but something else entirely, something that his human mind struggled to categorize. The boundary, said, its voice filled with reverence. The last threshold before the edge itself. Beyond this, reality as we know it ends. How do we cross it? We do not cross it, we pass through it. And in passing through, we will be changed. The boundary tests all who seek to enter the edge. It examines their hearts, their minds, their very essence. Those who are found worthy are allowed to pass. Those who are not are destroyed. Felt his heart rate increase. What does it look for? What makes someone worthy? That varies from being to being. The boundary sees into the deepest parts of you, the parts you hide even from yourself. It finds what you fear most, what you desire most, what you are most ashamed of, and then it judges whether those things make you worthy or unworthy. What if I'm unworthy? Turn to look at with those ancient golden eyes. Then you will die, and I will continue to the edge alone. I will attempt to activate the seed without you, and I will almost certainly fail. The weight of those words pressed down on everything they had worked for, everything they had traveled so far to achieve. All of it rested on whether an incomprehensible wall of light decided he was worthy. I'm scared, admitted. Good, fear means you understand the stakes. But do not let fear control you. Trust in yourself. Trust in who you have become over these years. Took a deep breath. He thought about everything he had experienced. The prison ship, the crashed eternal night, the years of repair work, the battle with the void stalker, the endless conversations with the greater sight blooming within his mind. He thought about the seed of stars and what it represented. Hope, new beginning. The resurrection of a species that had been dead for millions of years. He thought about humanity, his own species, suffering under the rule of the collective. He thought about the billions of people who had been told they were worthless, just as he had been told. And he thought about his mother, her face warm in his memory, her love a light that had never faded no matter how far he traveled from home. I'm ready, he said. Then let us pass through together. The eternal night moved forward, entering the wall of light. For a moment felt nothing, then everything changed. He was standing in darkness. The ship was gone, was gone. He was alone, suspended in an infinite void. A voice spoke to him. It was not a voice he heard with his ears, but a voice that resonated directly in his consciousness. It sounded like a million voices speaking at once, yet also like complete silence. Marcuschen, you seek to pass the boundary. You must be JUDGED. I understand, replied, his voice steady despite the fear. We will show you yourself. We will show you your truth. The darkness shifted. Images began to appear around him. He saw himself as a child, crying in his room because the other children had called him names. He saw himself as a teenager, failing an important test and lying to his mother about the results. He saw himself as a young adult, too afraid to tell a girl he loved her, watching her leave with someone else. These were his failures, his weaknesses, his moments of cowardice and dishonesty. The voice spoke again. Do you deny these things? No, said, they happened, they're part of who I am. The images continued. He saw himself on Colony 7, watching a man being beaten by collective guards and doing nothing to help. He saw himself stepping over homeless humans in the street, pretending not to see them. He saw himself accepting his status as a servant without ever fighting back. These were his shame, his complicity, his failure to stand against injustice. Do you deny these things? No, I was afraid. I was weak. I did what everyone else did because I didn't know there was another way. The images changed. He saw himself on the prison ship, watching kill the collective soldiers. He saw himself feeling relief instead of horror. He saw himself glad that the aliens who had oppressed his people were dead. This was his darkness, his capacity for hatred, his hidden satisfaction at violence against those who had wronged him. Do you deny this? Hesitated. This was harder to admit. Part of him wanted to deny it, to claim he had felt only fear or neutrality, but the boundary would know if he lied. No, I felt glad when they died. I'm not proud of it, but I won't deny it. The darkness shifted one more time, now saw different images. He saw himself repairing the eternal night, working through exhaustion because the work needed to be done. He saw himself sitting with, listening to stories about the ancient universe. He saw himself studying the ancient records, his mind opening to new possibilities. He saw himself fighting alongside against the Void Stalker, refusing to give up even when the psychic attacks threatened to tear his mind apart. He saw himself choosing to come on this journey, leaving behind everything familiar for the chance to help a creature he had only known for 7 years. These were his strengths, his determination, his capacity for growth and change. And then he saw something he did not expect. He saw himself at the edge of the universe, standing before a newborn star. He saw himself reaching out, his hand glowing with golden light. He saw new ancients emerging from the fire, dragons of light and power taking their first breaths. He saw himself smiling. "We have seen your truth," the voice said. "You are flawed. You are afraid. You are capable of hatred and cowardice." Braced himself for what came next. "But you are also growing, learning, changing. You carry hope in your heart despite everything that has been done to you. You choose to help others even when there is no benefit to yourself. You face your fears and your darkness without flinching." The darkness around began to lighten. "These qualities make you worthy." Light exploded around. He felt himself being pulled forward, through the boundary, toward whatever lay beyond. When his vision cleared, he was standing on the bridge of the eternal night. Was beside him, golden eyes wide with what looked like surprise. "You passed," the dragon said. "I was not certain you would." "The boundary judged me worthy," replied, his voice shaking slightly. "It saw everything inside me, the good and the bad, and it decided the good was enough." That is remarkable. The boundary is not known for mercy. Many ancients failed its test in the past. Maybe it's different for humans. Maybe we're judged by different standards. Made that grinding sound of laughter. Perhaps, or perhaps you are simply more worthy than you believe yourself to be. Turned to look at the view outside the ship. What he saw took his breath away. The edge of the universe was not what he had expected. He had imagined emptiness, a void beyond the void. Instead, he saw everything. Colors that had no name swirled and danced across the infinite canvas before him. Shapes formed and dissolved, becoming new shapes, then dissolving again. He saw what might have been mountains made of pure thought. He saw what might have been oceans made of condensed time. He saw things that his mind could not process, that the greater sight could not interpret, that simply existed beyond any category or description. "This is the edge," said, coming to stand beside him. "This is where everything begins and ends. This is where we will create a new star and bring my people back to life." Felt tears forming in his eyes. He did not know if they were tears of joy or fear or simple, overwhelming emotion. Perhaps they were all three. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "Yes," agreed. "It is the most beautiful thing in all of existence." They had arrived. After 12 years of travel, after crossing distances that comprehension, after passing through trials that tested their very souls, they had finally reached their destination. The seed of stars waited in its chamber, ready to be used. The edge of the universe waited, ready to receive it. And waited, ready to provide the hope that would make it all possible. The final stage of their journey was about to begin. The eternal night drifted through the impossibilities of the edge, spent hours simply watching, trying to comprehend what his eyes were showing him. Every moment brought something new, a wave of pure emotion that washed through the ship, making him laugh and cry at the same time, a field of floating symbols that rearranged themselves into patterns that seemed almost meaningful before dissolving into chaos. a creature made entirely of mathematical equations that swam past the observation screens, looked at with eyes that were prime numbers, and continued on its way. "How long do we have before we must act?" asked. "Time is difficult to measure here. What feels like hours to us may be seconds or centuries in the universe we left behind. But the seed of stars has a resonance that I can feel. It is becoming active. Within what you would perceive as the next few days, we must find the right location and begin the process." "How will we know the right location?" Closed its golden eyes. "I will feel it. There is a place at the edge where the conditions are perfect for star birth, where the raw potential of existence is most concentrated. I have been to such a place once before, long ago. The memory is faint, but the eternal night can help me search." The ship hummed in response, and felt the subtle shift in direction as it began to move with purpose through the swirling chaos. "While we search," continued, "you should prepare yourself. What you must do when we arrive will not be easy. You will need to connect directly with the seed of stars, to pour your hope into it like water into a vessel. This will require opening your mind completely, holding nothing back." "What happens if I hold something back?" "The seed will sense it, the connection will fail, and our chance will be lost." Nodded slowly. He had faced many challenges over the years, but this was different. This was not about physical strength or technical skill. This was about his very essence, his deepest self. "I want to see it again," he said, "the seed before we begin." Led him through the ship to the chamber where the seed of stars waited. The sphere floated in the center of the room, its surface covered in swirling patterns that seemed more active than before. It pulsed with a soft golden light that matched the color of his eyes. "Can it hear me?" asked. "In a manner of speaking. The seed is not conscious in the way you or I are conscious, but it can sense intention. It can feel emotion. It knows you are there." Stepped closer to the sphere. He reached out with his hand, stopping just short of touching its surface. "I'm going to help you," he said softly. "I'm going to give you everything you need, I promise." The seed pulsed brighter for a moment, chose to believe it was a response. "We should rest now," said. "Tomorrow, or whatever passes for tomorrow in this place, we will reach our destination. You will need all your strength." That night dreamed. He dreamed of his mother, standing in the doorway of their small apartment on Colony 7. She was waving at him, her face bright with a smile he remembered so well. Behind her, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "I'm proud of you," she said. "No matter what happens, I'm proud of you." "I miss you," replied. "I wish I could see you again." "You will, someday you will, but first you have something important to do, something only you can do." "What if I fail?" His mother's smile widened. "You won't. I know you won't, because you're my son and my son never gives up." The dream shifted, found himself standing in darkness, but it was not the darkness of the boundary. This was a different kind of darkness, warm and comfortable, like being wrapped in a blanket on a cold night. A voice spoke to him. It was not the voice of the boundary, not any voice he recognized. And yet it felt familiar. It felt like home. "Do you know why you are here?" "To help to activate the seed of stars, to bring back the ancients." "That is what you are doing. But do you know why you specifically are here? Why you were the one who was chosen?" Thought about the question. He had asked himself this many times over the years. Why him? Why a sterile nobody from a backwater colony? Why someone the universe had already decided was worthless? "I don't know," he admitted. "Then let me show you." The darkness changed. Saw himself standing in a vast ocean of light. All around him, threads extended in every direction, connecting everything to everything else. He understood, somehow, that these threads were the connections that bound the universe together. Every person, every creature, every particle of matter was linked to everything else through these invisible bonds. And he saw something else. He saw that his thread was special. It glowed brighter than the others, pulsing with a warm, golden light. It extended not just to the things around him but beyond, reaching toward something vast and distant. "What is this?" he asked. "This is your purpose. This is why you exist. Every being in the universe has a thread, a connection to the greater whole. Most threads are small, linking only to the things immediately around them. But some threads are larger. They reach further. They connect to things that matter on a cosmic scale. And mine is one of those threads. Your thread reaches all the way to the edge of existence. It connects to the place where new things are born. It has been waiting for this moment since the day you were conceived." "I don't understand. I'm just a human. I'm not special." "You are more special than you know, not because of anything you did, but because of what you are. You carry within you a capacity for hope that is rare in the universe, a belief in possibility that most beings lose as they grow older. You held on to this hope through slavery, through rejection, through being told you were worthless. You held on to it when there was no reason to. And now, that hope will save an entire species." Felt tears streaming down his face. All his life he had been told he was nothing, a sterile, useless piece of breeding stock that the collective didn't want. But now, in this dream, he was being told that his very existence had a purpose, a cosmic, universe-changing purpose. "Will I survive?" he asked, "after I activate the seed?" The voice was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, there was a sadness in it that made his heart ache. "That depends on you. The activation will require everything you have. If you hold back, you will survive, but the seed will not work. If you give everything, the seed will work, but you may not survive the process." "May not, so there's a chance." "There is always a chance. That is the nature of hope." Woke with those words echoing in his mind. He lay in his sleeping chamber for a long time, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what the dream had told him. Would he give everything, even if it meant his death? Was the rebirth of the ancients worth his life? He thought about the 63,000 years the dragon had waited, hopping for this moment. He thought about the memory garden, filled with thousands of lights that were all that remained of an entire species. He thought about his mother, her proud smile, her unwavering faith in him. He thought about humanity, billions of people suffering under alien rule, waiting for something to change. And he made his decision. When came to get him, was ready. "We have found the location," the dragon said. "The conditions are perfect. The seed is fully active. It is time." Rose from his bed. He felt calm, peaceful. The fear that had been gnawing at him for days was gone, replaced by a quiet certainty. "I'm ready," he said. They walked together through the eternal night, toward the chamber where the seed waited. The ship seemed to sense the importance of the moment. The lights along the corridors pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. The walls hummed with anticipation. When they entered the chamber, saw that the seed had changed. It was no longer a simple sphere of swirling patterns. It had grown, expanded, until it filled nearly half the room. Its surface blazed with golden light so bright that had to shield his eyes. "Stand before it," instructed. "Place your hands on its surface. Open your mind completely. Let it see everything you are, everything you feel, everything you hope for." Walked toward the seed. With each step, he felt the energy growing stronger, pressing against his consciousness like a tide trying to break through a dam. He reached the surface of the seed. He placed his palms against it. The connection was instantaneous and overwhelming. Felt his mind being pulled into the seed, merging with it, becoming part of it. He felt the ancient power that it contained, the potential for creation that had been waiting for millions of years. And he felt its hunger. The seed wanted hope. It needed hope the way a fire needs fuel. It reached into, searching for what it required. Gave it freely. He gave it his memories of his mother, her warm smiles and gentle words. He gave it his memories of the conversations that had changed his understanding of the universe. He gave it his memories of the journey, the wonders he had seen, the dangers he had overcome. He gave it his dreams for the future, his belief that things could be better, his faith that even the darkest times would eventually give way to light. He gave it his love for his mother, for the eternal night, for the universe itself in all its vastness and beauty. He gave it everything. The seed drank it in, growing brighter with each passing moment, felt himself being drained, his very essence flowing into the sphere. It was like pouring water from a cup. He could feel himself becoming less, emptying out, fatting. But he did not stop. He did not hold back. He gave it his hope, the pure, burning hope that had kept him going through all the years of hardship, the hope that had made him worthy to pass the boundary, the hope that had seen in him from the very first moment. The seed blazed like a star, the entire chamber filled with golden light so intense that it should have burned to ash. But instead, the light passed through him, transformed him, made him part of something larger than himself. And then the seed launched itself. The sphere shot upward, passing through the ceiling of the eternal night as if it were not there, saw it through eyes that were no longer entirely his own. He watched as the seed flew into the swirling chaos of the edge, finding the exact spot where conditions were perfect. The seed began to unfold. It was not an explosion. It was not a birth. It was something else entirely, something that human language had no words to describe. The sphere broke apart into countless fragments, and each fragment began to burn with its own inner fire. They swirled together, drawn by forces beyond gravity or electromagnetism, forming a sphere of plasma that grew larger and larger. A star was being born. Watched in wonder as the new star took shape. It was not like the stars he knew from his own universe. This star burned with golden fire, the same golden light that filled his eyes. It pulsed with a rhythm that matched the heartbeat of the universe itself. And then, from the heart of the golden fire, they began to emerge. Dragons. They were small at first, no larger than his hand. But they grew quickly, their forms solidifying, their wings spreading, their eyes opening to see the universe for the first time in millions of years. 1, then 2, then 10, then 100. New ancients, being born from the fire of a star created by hope. Felt joy unlike anything he had ever experienced. It filled him completely, pushing out everything else. He was laughing and crying at the same time, his body shaking with the intensity of the emotion. He had done it. He had actually done it. The connection with the seed broke, fell backward, his strength completely gone. He lay on the floor of the chamber, looking up at the ceiling, seeing the golden light of the newborn star still shining through the ship's hull. Was beside him in an instant. The dragon's golden eyes were wet with tears, something had never seen before. "You did it," said, its voice breaking with emotion. "You actually did it. After 63,000 years, my people live again." "How many?" whispered. He could barely speak. His body felt like an empty shell. "I count 147. 147 new ancients being born at this very moment. The largest single birth in the history of my kind." Smiled. "Good, that's good." "You are dying," said. It was not a question. "I know, I gave everything, just like you said I would need to. There must be something I can do, some way to save you." Reached up and placed his hand on his massive snout. "It's okay, I'm not afraid. This is what I was born for. This is my purpose." Made a sound that had never heard before. It was a keening, a wail of grief that seemed to shake the very foundations of reality. "You cannot leave me," the dragon said. "Not now. Not after everything we have been through together. You are my friend, the only true friend I have ever had." "You won't be alone anymore," replied, his voice growing weaker. "You have your people back. You have 147 new ancients to teach and guide. You have everything you ever wanted." I want you to see it. I want you to meet them. I want you to know what you have created." His vision was beginning to fade. The golden light was growing dimmer, or perhaps his eyes were simply failing. He could feel his heartbeat slowing, each beat coming further apart than the last. "Tell them about me," he said. "Tell them about the human who helped bring them into existence. Tell them that we're not just breeding stock. Tell them that we can do incredible things when given the chance." "I will tell them. I will make sure your name is remembered for as long as ancients exist." Smiled one last time. "Thank you for everything, for saving me from that prison ship, for teaching me about the universe, for being my friend. Thank you for giving me hope when I had forgotten what it felt like." The golden light faded completely, felt himself drifting away like a leaf being carried by a gentle stream. He was not afraid. He was at peace. And then, just as the darkness was about to take him completely, something happened. The newborn ancients, all 147 of them, turned their attention toward the eternal night. They felt something, a presence that was fading, a life force that was draining away. They felt. Without speaking, without planning, they acted in unison. They directed their combined energy toward the small ship floating near the dying star. They poured their newborn power into it, filling it with golden fire. And that fire found. It rushed into him like a river filling an empty canyon. It restored what had been taken. It healed what had been broken. It gave back what he had given away. Gasped, his eyes flew open. His heart began to beat strongly again. He was alive. More than alive, he was changed. Sat up slowly, looking at his hands. They were glowing faintly with golden light. He could feel power flowing through his veins, ancient power, the same energy that filled and the newborn dragons. "What happened?" he asked, his voice strong now instead of weak. Was staring at him with an expression of utter shock. "They saved you, the new ancients. They felt you dying and they gave you some of their essence. They made you one of us. One of you. You are no longer entirely human. You have become something new, something that has never existed before, a bridge between our species and yours." Stood up, his body felt different, lighter, more powerful. He could sense things he had never sensed before. He could feel the presence of the newborn ancients outside the ship, their curiosity and wonder and joy. He could feel the universe itself, stretching out in all directions, infinite and beautiful and full of possibility. "I can feel them," he said. "I can feel everything." The greater sight you developed was just the beginning. Now you have true ancient awareness. You can perceive reality as we do. You can manipulate energy as we do. You have become something remarkable. Walk to the observation screen. Outside, the newborn star still burned with golden fire, and around it, 147 young ancients were flying, testing their wings, discovering their power. One of them noticed watching. It flew closer to the ship, pressing its face against the hull as if trying to see inside. It was small, barely larger than its head, with scales that shimmered between purple and silver. "Hello," said. The young ancient's voice came directly into his mind, clear and bright and innocent. "Hello, you are the one who made us. We felt you inside the seed when we were being born. You gave us hope. You gave us life." "I'm glad you're here," replied. "We are glad too. Thank you for everything." The young ancient flew away, rejoining its siblings in their dance around the newborn star. Watched them with tears streaming down his face. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we return to the universe. We bring the new ancients with us. We teach them, guide them, help them grow into their full potential." Paused. "And perhaps we do something more." "What?" "You spoke of your people, the humans suffering under collective rule. You asked me to tell the new ancients that humans can do incredible things when given the chance." The dragon's golden eyes gleamed with something that might have been mischief. "Perhaps it is time to give your people that chance." Felt his heart leap. You mean? The collective is powerful but not invincible. With 147 new ancients and the eternal night, and you as our bridge to humanity, we could change the balance of power in the galaxy. We could free your people. We could give them the opportunity to become what they were always meant to be. Turned to look out at the newborn star and the dragons flying around it. He thought about his mother, still living somewhere in collective space. He thought about the billions of humans suffering under alien rule. He thought about the mark on his forehead, the red circle that meant sterile, worthless waste. Yes, he said, let's do that, let's free my people. Made that grinding sound of laughter. I had a feeling you would say that. Very well, let us return to the universe and change it. The eternal night began to move, turning away from the edge of existence, heading back toward the stars and galaxies they had left behind. The newborn ancients followed, a fleet of young dragons eager to explore the universe that was now their home. And at the front of them all stood, no longer a sterile nobody, no longer a worthless prisoner, but something new, a bridge between species, a symbol of hope, a force for change. The journey back would take years, but did not mind. He had all the time in the universe now. He had power he was only beginning to understand. He had his oldest friend. He had 147 new siblings, beings born from his hope. And he had a purpose. The collective would learn that the human they had thrown away was coming back, and he was bringing the most powerful force in the universe with him. The edge of existence grew smaller behind them. The familiar stars began to appear again. Reality around the eternal night as it passed back through the boundary, which welcomed as one who had already proven his worth. 12 years of travel stretched before them. 12 years of teaching and learning and planning. 12 years to master his new abilities and for the young ancients to grow into their power. 12 years was nothing compared to what came next. On the other side of that journey waited a galaxy that would never be the same. The collective did not know it yet, but their days were numbered. An empire built on oppression and cruelty was about to face judgment. Looked out at the universe before him. He thought about his mother, waiting somewhere in that vast expanse, not knowing that her son was coming home. He thought about the millions of sterile humans who had been cast aside like garbage, who would soon learn that being unable to breed did not make you worthless. He thought about the children not yet born, who would grow up in a universe where humans were not slaves but equals. Hope. It had started with hope, a sterile human who refused to give up, and a dragon who had waited 63,000 years for someone who could still believe in possibility. Now that hope would spread across the stars. It would tear down empires and build new civilizations. It would show the universe what happened when you gave humans the chance to be extraordinary. Had told him once that young species break free from their oppressors when they have fire in their hearts. Had that fire now, and he was going to share it with every human being in existence. The eternal night flew on. The young ancients flew beside it, and once declared worthless because he could not produce offspring, smiled at the future that waited before him. He had been sterile. He had been broken. He had been tied to an alien ship and taken to the edge of everything. And from that edge, he had brought back hope. Not just for the ancients. For all of humanity. The story of the human who saved a species and changed a galaxy was only beginning, and it would be a story worth telling for millions of years to come. The stars welcomed them home. Far away in collective space, on a small planet called Colony 7, an elderly woman named Sarah looked up at the night sky. She did not know that her son was alive. She did not know about the dragons or the edge of the universe or the miracle of the seed of stars. But something made her smile. A warmth spread through her heart that she could not explain. A feeling that somewhere out there, something wonderful had happened. She whispered into the darkness, not expecting anyone to hear. "I'm proud of you wherever you are. I'm proud of you." Across the vast distances of space, a young man who was no longer entirely human felt those words land in his heart like a kiss. "I'm coming home, Mom," he whispered back, "and I'm bringing friends." The eternal night accelerated into the darkness between stars, carrying its impossible passengers toward a destiny that would reshape the universe. The ancient dragon's hope had been fulfilled, and a new hope, born from human stubbornness and love, was just beginning to spread its wings. The edge of everything had given birth to something new. Now that something was coming home, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The golden fire of the newborn star still burned at the edge of existence, a permanent reminder of what could happen when hope refused to die. It would burn for billions of years, a lighthouse at the boundary of reality, telling everyone who saw it that miracles were possible. That even the most broken, forgotten, worthless creatures could change the universe. That hope was the most powerful force in all of existence. And that sometimes, being tied to a broken alien ship was just the beginning of the greatest adventure anyone could ever have. Looked at the stars ahead and smiled. His true journey was about to begin.